Dr. Rom Weber is an international psychic medium, now in her 18th year of public work following an original academic training as a sex therapist. In the metaphysical world, Dr. Rom is well known for her spot-on evidential mediumship cultivated by her attention to detail and her passion for connecting to loved ones. And I'm excited. And hello, Dr. Rom. How are you?
Good evening, Maureen. Fine. How are you doing tonight?
Fine. I'm excited about you joining us. It's going to be lovely. I can't
I
wait.
am
Well,
too.
here you are. I wanted to ask you something about what you did previously when, 18 years ago, you went into, which is a very interesting healing thing to do, go into the type of training of a PhD in
Mhm.
sex therapist. What gave you what inspired you to do that?
That's interesting. I think that originally my interest in it came from the fact that I began realizing from an early age two things. One is that people were very comfortable talking to me about personal concerns. And then, as far as the topic of human sexuality is concerned, it really seemed like growing up in America here that we had our jobs and our meal planning and our hobbies and our vocations and our avocations and our religious interest or not religious interest and so on and so forth. But sexuality as a topic was like put way over on the far side, and it was kind of it was kind of deregulated from the mainstream in so many ways. And I was curious about why this very essential part of human experience was treated with such kid gloves. Why were people having such difficulties with this? And why was there such taboo and so many different issues like that came up? So I decided to explore a degree in that where I would be able to counsel people and do research. And that's what I did. I started teaching in 1987, 88, very early. And then I got my PhD in 2000.
Well, it's interesting because do you think that maybe doing that and what you're saying is it's interesting. I understand what you meant because it is kind of like shoved in a corner there. Did it led you to what your work is now? What perhaps your life purpose, I guess?
Interestingly enough, I think it was an amazing career choice in and of itself, which I can still be active with, but as a stepping stone to metaphysical work, absolutely. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is that, of course, sexuality and the afterlife, which is often, death and dying, two very difficult things for people to talk about. So by the time I got to be a medium, I was already trained in how to handle these challenging issues and to be calm and to help relax the people that came to see me on a talk communication basis, on a talk therapy basis. So that was part of it. And I think the other part of it, as far as human sexuality and mediumship goes, is that, for the longest time, the fields weren't crossing. I put up a real strong ethical wall because, when people come to see a sex therapist, they don't want to really hear a psychic reading or the other side. They're there to see you as an academic, a scientist, a professional. And when people consult me as a psychic or a medium, they're looking for an experience of spirituality, clarity, or connection with the other side. So as a sexologist, it's really inappropriate for me to put on that hat of the metaphysical world. But in the metaphysical world, there's nothing stopping me from taking a look at a person's sexual concerns or relationship concerns using my clairaudience, my clairsentience, and so on and so forth. I can bring those skills in and help them with their problem solving in that capacity too.
Yeah, that must be a real benefit, actually. I'm just thinking about it because, it's enlightening to me because it makes sense. Well, I didn't go to school for it, but it certainly does. Could you tell us, I wanted to ask you, what is a sitting? And, a lot of times we have psychic mediums, we've had people, mediumship and all that, but we never talk about it in the term, it is a sitting. It's like not a reading, it's a sitting. So what is a sitting like? Or, a lot of people go, well, I went to a medium or I saw a medium. They never say, I went to a sitting. I've noticed that. The wording sitting is not usually something, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I
I,
don't
you
know.
know, actually, you're very accurate to pick up on that, and I thank you because I think your listeners are going to hear a lot of clarity and understanding coming out of this. Um, in the UK, where I've trained and worked, they call it a sitting, and a sitting means an opportunity for mediumship between a client and a medium, and that client is called a sitter. Unless we're doing platform mediumship, we're generally sitting down. But that's the phrasing that they use for it. Here in America, most of the time when we talk about psychic work and mediumship, what we're talking about is whether we are connecting with that client's energy or we're connecting with the energies of loved ones in spirit around them, or perhaps if other people are connecting with guides, angels, whatnot. It depends where the focus of that connection is. And what I saw was that on television, you would have mediums sometimes, and they would say, X, Y, and Z is getting read today, or I gave this one a reading. And I think it became a little confusing because when I say we'll do a demonstration, and I have people come in an audience type of situation, we have a gallery style demonstration, people are often confused and they think I'm reading their energy. And that's the last thing I want to do when I'm working with the spirit world. I want to connect with the energy of people who have passed on. So sometimes it's easier to call it a sitting to help people understand that unless I'm doing psychic work or intuitive work and I'm centering on their personal concerns, my focus is on contacting those who have passed on to spirit.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you explain that. That, I think, really clarifies it a lot. And I agree. When there's four of us on here, and when the co-host, he's English. He's English. Steve, aren't you? He's in the background listening. I know he is. And he's a medium as well. And anyway, sitting is more. Ooh, can you tell us what kind of information would come through during? If I came to you for a sitting, or I would actually be probably looking to perhaps. I know that you do galleries and a lot of things, in front of people, groups. But if I was to come personally, what would I be seeking out? Obviously, to connect with somebody that I miss that passed away, or so. What kind of information comes through during a sitting, or what can I expect? What could you expect?
To start off is I would do what I would call a tune-in. I might have somebody give me a topic in their lives, just so they feel that they can just start relaxing to the session. So we might do that for a few minutes. Maybe they've got a concern about their job or a family member or something like that. It's not always necessary, but if a person's coming to see a medium for the first time, they can be a little bit nervous sometimes. And they're also nervous because they can be worried about getting emotional. So the first thing that I want to do is help them get a little settled. And then I also spend a few minutes reading off a list of what I call talking points. And that's to help people understand that really anybody who's passed on can come through. So some people have a belief that if a person's passed on for a day, they can't come through. Or if they died before the client was born, they can't come through. Or if they didn't like the person, they can't come through. And so people walk in with a lot of preconceived ideas that I haven't found to be true. So we want to get that out of the way. So that's like the first 5 minutes or so of the session. After that, what I'll do is I will tune in and I will begin to notice the faintest little perception, usually, of a spirit communicator drawing near. Or we say coming close, drawing near, beginning to resonate with that energy, detect it. And the way I like to explain it is like just as if it was like a little piece of dental floss or a gossamer thread. And then over a period of time, as I get information relayed to me that I communicate to my sitter, that connection gets closer and closer. We call it blending with the spirit. And we want to establish as deep of a blend as we can because that makes our work more accurate. And so at that point, it's really a conversational experience, usually in one direction, mostly. I'm going to receive information from the spirit communicator, and then I'll give that to the client, and I will check to make sure that they understand the information as it's coming through. But back to your other question about the specific kind of information that comes through, because I know a lot of people are curious about that. It's quite wide-ranging. You can get things like health conditions prior to their passing. You can get things in the client's life that the spirit communicator is aware of from the afterlife, which can be as recent as on their way to the session or maybe a major life event. So they can call it that. They can call out names of other people that they are there in spirit with. They can make references to people that have been born since they've passed on. So sometimes like that. They can give messages that are topically relevant. And then we can also get things like where they live, some of their names, who they're connected to, and the relationship to the client. So lots of different kinds of information can come through.
That's incredible. So when a person's there, do they? Well, or you actually? So what? I guess I don't. So if you were to prepare to see something, I know you talked about going in with these ideas. So a lot of people do have those ideas. They just passed away, or they didn't like them, and all those other things. That's really untrue. There's no rules with whatever is what you're saying, and so you relax people and get that out of the way. But as far as should they bring something, or what should they do to prepare? I mean, do you tape this, or is there something that that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I have to update my website because in the beginning I had made a suggestion that people might want to bring an object, because way before I got into this, the first thing that I really had skill with was psychometry. So I could hold on to an object, and that object would be imprinted with a particular person's energy. And I find right now that's pretty much no longer my style of work. Pretty much just connecting directly with spirit there. That is the preferred method, if possible. Not everybody works like that, but there's no reason we can't work like that, I should say. And so what I encourage people to do is bring a friend. That I would say, I do lots of people one-on-one, but what happens is the information can come through so quickly that the person I'm working with is like a deer in the headlights. Like their brain can't process quickly enough how much information is coming through. I mean, we can slow it down, but for somebody, especially if they're not expecting that kind of accuracy and they're hearing one thing after another, they get a little frozen sometimes. So, bring a friend, bring a family member, bring a stenographer, for crying out loud. But bring some notes. Bring some notes. That they're free to audio record if they want to as well. I'm wide open with that. What is really important, though, is that you have some notes or a friend with you or something to jot down, because as the information comes through, my God, they can forget their next of kin. They can forget their own name. You're calling in with a client and her middle name is Mary, and I'll say, I've got a client in spirit that's making reference to Mary, and it feels like it's a second part of a 3-part name. Your client will look at you like, I don't know any Marys.
And, and they'll think back later, of course they do, they're probably the sister. Have you ever had anybody really, I'm just kind of curious that, it's interesting because what you do, I have a lot of respect for. But some people want to go and just kind of, they're curious. They're not going to take it real seriously because they don't, whatever their judgments are or whatever. And then they freak out. They may freak out.
Well, let's see. Couple of different things. One is that as a medium, I work with a guarantee. And my guarantee is that I can bring through someone clearly that they can recognize where I haven't done my job. So that means that they need to be on the receiving end of that information and be able to say, yes, I recognize this person, I understand them, and you're bringing them through in a distinct way. So that's part of the job. And I would say that out of every couple of hundred people, those 2 sessions might end every now and then. It's very rare, honestly. So you do get some people that want to test, and
silly.
Say this. One thing that is really hard for people to pick up sometimes is this concept that we cannot conjure a particular spirit up, and if that spirit, much desire, does come through, and I can clearly identify them, I also don't have the ability to control what they're going to give me. Right? Mm-hmm. So what I'll have is I'll have somebody come in and they'll say, I want to talk to my mother and I want to tell me about, my love life. Well, good luck. That might happen. Indeed, mom might come through for the entire session and her messages may only concern the person's love life. But I can't make that happen. I can tune in and I can give the information, and that's the extent of my mediumistic ability. We can try asking questions once that really strong connection is made, and sometimes that does work. But the way it's been said to me is you don't go to a dinner party and bring the menu. Right. So a lot of times people need to be a little bit more open when they come. And if I'm getting the name right and I'm getting the condition right, and you're like getting like 90%, 95% accuracy, and because the medium doesn't say the one thing they came here to hear, they don't buy it. Right. And that's a lost experience for what does come through.
You know, it's interesting. Like, I'm just keeps thinking about. Did you hear all that noise that was just going on, Dr. Rom? Did you hear that noise? There's someone trying to come in now. I don't know. I just heard all this gurgling. So, uh, you know, I the more and more just thinking and reflecting back on the original asking about what is sitting. I'm it just well because people get close to people that die and they want. Well, I want to ask you. I guess when is there a time frame? I know I said before maybe there's no rules, but is there a time frame that somebody should wait or before maybe seeking a sitting from you?
Yeah, hi, I'm back.
Oh, great. Thank you. I don't know what was going on there, but it's always something something good. So
Okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't get that. I didn't get to hear, or I don't know what anybody else did. Like, I don't know what you heard on your end, but it was really hard to hear what I asked you and what you were explaining. Could you?
Not a problem. Why don't
Thanks.
you just go back to the last question you did hear, and we'll start from there, because I was able to hear everything.
You were okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I was asking about, is there, although I know you mentioned there's not a lot of rules, but would you say that you would give some advice to somebody that let's say someone just had died, real recent? I mean, would you do you encourage people to wait, or does it really matter before they come for a sitting?
So what I'll do is I'll just go back to as I began that response. What I'd like to start off with it by saying is this. I've struggled with this question a lot. I'm not a grief counselor. I'm not a mental health professional, and I'm not a psychologist. And in the state of New York, where I live and where I work out of, psychic and mediumship work, when it's done outside of a church-type environment, is considered for entertainment purposes only. So we can be spot on accurate, but that's the laws of the state. So when you put those two things together, I'm careful. And I've decided over the years that it's really up to the client to decide for themselves when they'd be ready for that kind of communication. Because frankly, if somebody comes in and they're highly emotional, it can be very difficult for them to receive the information. So I would say that the person could work with that in accordance with their own spiritual beliefs, with their own sense of where they are in the process of grieving, and what experience of grief has it been for them. For example, I had a client whose dad came through in a session, and she was so happy to hear from him. And he came through with such clarity and so much factual information, and just went on and on for, I think, the entire hour. And I said to her at the end of this, I said, because he never said how long he'd been passed on. So I said, your dad's a great spirit communicator. He's got all this energy coming through. And she said, well, we buried him yesterday. So it can be like that. And it can be somebody who has been grieving for years and years, on the other hand, might not feel emotionally ready for that experience. So I leave it with the client.
Yeah, that I do understand what you're saying about that and entertainment. Well, because we all do this work, and that's so true. So really, it depends on the person, and do you find that, do people have certain expectations?
About? Hello?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I got you. No, I got you now.
Okay. Maybe it's my dad. I've been waiting for him to come through, but that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. Have you found, I'm going to go in this direction with you first. Have you found, because of the work you do, that anybody close to you, if you have experienced this, I'm just assuming perhaps we all have, but has, died, is it difficult for you to connect with them?
I want to say yes and no, and let me explain both sides. The yes is, if you were my client and we were sitting for a mediumship demonstration, or sitting, if you will, and I'm bringing through somebody you know and you love, and I bring through 10 pieces of information, chances are right then and there, you're going to be able to confirm or validate everything with a yes, no, or sometimes a maybe I need to do more research. But if we're getting the person, it's going to be spot on, and it's going to be there, and you're going to be able to validate it. With my own people who've passed on to spirit, I can get the same quality of information, but because it's an internal validation process, it's a lot harder for me to buy, even though it's equally as effective. And I'll give you an example. I have a friend that passed on within the last year. She was a very close friend, and she was, as much can be said, prepared for her passing. She consulted with people from many spiritual traditions. She read nonfiction books all the way to the end about what might happen. And to the extent that she could, she accepted it and went on peacefully. With that said, she, of course, said to me, "Hey, Rom, I've known you for years. I know you're a medium. And if there's any way I can come back, we'll do it." So we said that we would, meet again. I was preparing for a different client, maybe about 4 weeks later. And right before my client walks in, I engage in a meditative practice. And there's usually a chair for my client right in front of me, or perhaps a couch. And I open my eyes, and there's my friend. I got the biggest shock because I saw them as clearly as I saw, as I see people for my clients. And I've seen her several times since. And sometimes it's funny, and sometimes it's more in an advisory type role. But I think that's starting to shift for me now. I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable with my own people. But yeah, it's harder. We don't have that validation the same way. So I go to other mediums.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, it's like you can be real objective and everything else, well, that's the way I look at it. But I have a lot of respect for what you're saying, actually, but I think it's kind of really neat that you're seeing your friend like right there, like in a physical form, is what you're saying, right?
For me, when I perceive objectively and visually, I perceive like a hologram, if you will. That's the best way to say it. If you remember when there was Star Wars, I'm thinking, and I believe it was a Princess Leia that you saw on the beam, the tractor beam there.
Yeah.
Pardon me, I'm not really up on my sci-fi here. But you know what I'm talking about. It's the idea of an image that, is solid enough that you can discern them in full color, but in my experience isn't a body. Now, here's the thing. Everybody sees differently, right? So she could have come that way in my mind's eye where we daydream, and it would have been just as accurate to me. What was a little shocking was that I saw her taking the form in the chair.
Yeah, that must have been cool.
It was great to see. I mean, when you have somebody you love, that's the thing. Everybody feels, let me take that back. Mediumship has often been presented as something that you do with the lights off in a spooky environment. And it's given the word seance, which in French just means meeting, a really bad name. So in my work, one of the things I'm hoping to do is to continue to say, hey, you know what? This is a reunion. This is a celebration. And we can do it in the bright light of day, outside, or with the air conditioner on, and have your tea and coffee and whatnot. It's that positive environment that works for me when I work either one-on-one or with a group.
Right. It's not, you can be out in the garden, you could be at the beach or something like that.
Sure.
That's lovely. I like that because that is true. People get an idea that it's going to be all the hoochie candles burning and everything. And
they're expecting the scarves, the long earrings. Yeah,
exactly. Well, don't you wear that stuff?
Privately.
Well, so what you do readings. I know you do you can do it over the phone or Skype as well with people.
Mm-hmm. I had a hard time accepting that would work at first, to be honest with you. A former mentor, Dr. Karen Lundegaard, who was a psychologist and a medium, and therefore that she understood the academic and the metaphysical background too, so she was a great mentor to me. She was the one that suggested it could be done by phone, and so that was the first time that I took some steps in that direction. And then I saw it work consistently by phone, and then I saw it work consistently by Skype, and I've seen it work by text, like instant relay chat. That's worked a couple of times, and now what I'm hoping to do, and heck, who knows, maybe in conjunction with Psychic Access, but what I really like to do is a format on radio where you can have 12, 20 different callers on the line all at once, and it can be like a virtual seance with them all together. Because a lot of these shows are going, one reading after the other, and sometimes their loved ones and spirits kind of jump the line. So I'd really like to see if that would too. So I always feel like it's fun to push the limits of what can happen, because
that's a good idea.
Yeah, thank you. If you want to do it, I'm game. So first person, get me on that. But
that's a good idea. I find working in this work too, we're all asked about the same thing. And I used to think, well, how could you ever, in the early 90s, it started, just through the phone or whatever. And I thought, how could that be done? But that's what the good old technology is you're able to do it. Somehow it's it's workable.
Yes, it is.
It is really workable. What about I know that you do you said talked about gallery. So
Sure.
are you talking about how we see John? Well, I see John Edwards. I guess he's the first person pops in my mind. I know there's other people out there, but so you do like large audience.
Yes. I work in many different capacities. I did a gallery demonstration last night in Manhattan. I'll be doing another one in Cleveland this Saturday. And these are different events. I do them either by myself or with other mediums, and we split the time. And what it is, it's an opportunity to have that experience of mediumship in a group session. And many people will receive messages, generally not everybody in attendance, because there's only so many mediums and so many hours and so forth. But we try to bring through as many people as we can. And it brings through a taste of the experience. And it's kind of a different experience because those groups give like a battery. It can be very high energy, and people can laugh and they'll carry on and have a good time. And, as their people in spirit come through, they really, their characters get known. So, in a half hour in, we're going to know that's Aunt Lucy over there, and that's, Cousin Joe on the other side. And you'll hear them kind of go back and forth through the different mediums. So it's a lot of fun.
So, in fact, the mediumship is like you're saying how you get your information, and so you work with others that will get theirs differently.
Sure. For me, I'm very much clairvoyant. So through my perception, my visual perception, so either seeing objectively or seeing inside my mind's eye. That's my primary sense. I also feel and have an experience of direct knowledge. So those are my three primary senses. But I got a lot of things musically too, because I have a musical background. So I'll get parts of songs. But usually pictures and images is my strongest, are my strongest. And then as far as other people, I can tell you there's people I work with that have completely opposite and complementary skills to me, where we don't overlap at all, but the quality of the information is just as good.
Right. Yeah, it's nice that everybody can fuse together and come. I mean, that's this. And I wanted to ask you about this. Do your point of view, or how you see things? No pun intended. Do you think mediumship is something that is learned, or something that we're just born with, or can anyone learn it?
We forget and we remember again. And I say it like this because a lot of people will have the experience of seeing a very young child who's never met grandpa in the afterlife because grandpa passed before they were born. And they'll walk in on that kid talking to the spirit of grandpa. Something like that. I hear that a lot. And what I also see a lot is people who are in their late stages of life. Perhaps they're in hospice or in a situation where, they're dealing with their final days. And not only will they begin talking to people that nobody else can see, but, it'll be recognized by a caregiving staff, hospitals, hospices, family members will notice it. And so without effort, there's these two parts of life, the beginning and the end, that people regularly observe people of all different religious and spiritual backgrounds having contact with the afterlife. And then there's all that time in the middle. So for me, I feel, are we all born mediumistic, psychic, intuitive? Absolutely. But I think that making the effort to refine it, to unfold it, to develop it is a choice.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm losing you again. Can you hear me, Dr. Rom? This is interesting. I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
I couldn't hear you. I can hear you now. Gosh, that's just interesting. Usually we don't have this. I'll take responsibility for it. It's all that PK energy going on. I wanted to ask you about. What's your idea what's your point of view between a psychic and a medium? We've talked about this all before, but I agree with what you're saying about, I think we're all born as well we come into this world with our wits. We get conditioned, unfortunately, and get taken out of it. But so what's your view on the difference?
Here's how I look at it. I like to reclaim the word psychic because psychic and intuitive I find are quite similar. And they refer to the channels of perception we all have. those channels would be complementary to our regular senses. So when we talk about psychic and intuitive senses, we're talking about the channels of seeing with the mind's eye, hearing with the mind's ear, having that gut feeling, having that sudden knowledge, the awareness, right? And in my understanding, as far as dictionary definitions, the big difference is that if you call it intuitive, you're not depending on those channels being there because of the presence of the solar spirit. But if you're using the word psychic, you're recognizing the idea of a solar spirit connected with those channels. There's a lot of situations in which you can teach people the same skill set and call it intuition because they don't need to buy into a religious or spiritual philosophy. Those skills are still available to them. If you call it psychic, sometimes that word can be charged for people, but again, it refers to the same skill set. So those are two skill sets, two perceptions. Mediumship uses the skill sets, the channels of perception, the psychic channels of perception, the intuitive channels of perception, except the focus now is on people who have passed on. And also my experience of the two is a little bit different in that psychic to me, intuitive work that feels very grounded, whereas with mediumistic, we feel like we're vibrating a little bit higher. We feel like our energy is going upwards and outwards. There's a little bit of a difference there when we're working, and people can often see it. They can get a sense of that too. So to me, I agree with the people who say all mediums are psychic because we're all working those channels of perception, but not necessarily all psychics are mediumistic. Maybe they have not, for whatever reason, developed or applied those channels of perception to the spirit world. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. In fact, I concur with that, what you're saying. Very much so. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. We're going to take a short break from our sponsor, psychicaccess.com, and we'll be back.
A new era in psychic services has begun. psychicaccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at psychicaccess.com.
And we're back with Dr. Rom, and we're having I'm having a great time interviewing you. And I wanted to know, and forget about what you were talking about, Stephen, but on the break. But sorry. So, Dr. Rom, you're a psychic and a medium, because like you just kind of explained it, and I agree with that. If you're a medium, you're a psychic.
Yeah. And I offer both skill sets, both types of readings, because some people want one and some people want the other. And for the longest time, I was only doing mediumship work because, I was really enjoying all the validation from that. You can get a real strong sense of your accuracy when you're doing mediumship. Whereas with psychic work, especially if you're looking at past, present, future, trends, possibilities, solutions, you don't always know what's going to happen. Trust comes out of your mouth that you're perceiving the information in the same way.
Yes, I agree with that too. Do you, when you were younger, do you remember before, usually till you age by 10, I think it is, usually conditioning set in.
Mm-hmm.
Before that time, do you remember being able to connect or see spirit at that time?
Sure. Okay. An invisible friend like every kid does. Very relatable. And it was neither encouraged nor discouraged by my family, but rather looked as something pretty neutral. I don't think it was anything one way or the other. But I didn't really have context with, relatives that had passed on or anything like that. What I had mostly was I had an uncanny way of understanding people. And sometimes that was way in advance of my social relationship to them. That was problematic in the beginning. It's like being able to just get somebody and you've barely met them. And I had to learn to work with that. That was definitely a learned skill. But as far as kid stuff goes, not. Not really. I was really raised to be an academic, and so I
Mm.
went kindergarten to PhD nonstop.
Yeah, it's well, it's in the environment you thrive in and such where kids are allowed to. Not that you had a bad environment, I'm saying, but the scientific area, I get what you're saying. Do you? If I was okay, let's say I wanted to. What would you do if I wanted to say I'd like to learn how to develop my mediumistic abilities?
Sure. Well, I don't mean this to sound like a broken record with anybody, but the meditation is key because you need to find a way to quiet the mind in order for the thoughts of others to channel through you. That's really important. So it doesn't really matter which technique you use. But one thing you need to do is you need to develop the skill to quiet your mind for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. In my case, 2 hours. Really important. So sample a lot of different meditation methods and find something that works. That doesn't mean sitting in complete silence 45 minutes. That's not everybody's cup of tea. Maybe there's visualization exercises. Maybe there's breathing techniques. I've got some of these listed on my website. But the thing is, sample a couple different kinds, find out what works for you, and find out what consistently works. Because in my training, what we learn how to do is we learn to jump into that frame of mind within seconds. It's not something you really want to do in seconds. You'd rather have 5 or 10 minutes to start moving your mind into the spiritual mindset. But that's part of it. Another technique I like to teach people, I'll give you 2 quick ones. One is you can just focus on a spot on the wall. And when you start daydreaming, you can start recognizing that's your mind switching into the alpha dominant rhythm, and that's good for psychic work. So the moment you capture that sense of daydreaming, that's when you're mentally relaxing. So that's the first part in. Another thing you can do, I like to use as a technique, is who is the thinker behind your thoughts? You kind of put your head around that a little bit and you start moving away from your personal mind. And that helps out a lot. But it's a process. It's not something that just happens overnight. And it takes mediumship a heck of a lot of trial and error to develop your accuracy. Because all self-trust.
Well, also, it takes a lot out of you, doesn't it?
Too. And now it charges me. Quite honestly.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, a lot of times, I mean, you can get physical illnesses. I mean, if you're not grounded, if you're doing this work, I mean, it's because there's, energy's energy. You're picking up a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So
I think it's really important to learn how to let the idea of universal energy flow through you and out rather than using your personal energy reserves. Learn that technique too. It's very important.
What have you ever come across anybody that came for a sitting and then let's say because you're open, it's almost like your channel's open, or your station's open for business, and that somebody's coming through that's an unwanted guest.
Oh, oh yeah, and that can be funny. And let's talk about that a little bit. There are situations in which a person in spirit left a lifetime of situations like they were abusive in maybe a physical way, a sexual way, an emotional way, a verbal way. Maybe they had a criminal record that they passed on with, so maybe they passed on either serving time or not serving time. Maybe there was a big family argument, all these types of things. Somebody didn't get along, somebody didn't like you. They say the in-laws and the outlaws, right? So you've got situations like this. And while I cannot conjure those people up, they come through. Chances are they have a message to bring through, and chances are it's I'm sorry. So what I can do is, once I relay enough information from them that the sitter is then going to recognize them, I can cut off that communication if the sitter would prefer not to hear from them. It's just really important the sitter recognizes them so I can move on to the next spirit communicator. And it's their choice if they want to hear from them and they want to hear this person often talk about how they remember their life and what kind of an impact they had on someone else. It's really up to the sitter whether or not they want to choose to hear that.
Right. That makes sense too. That makes so that's you give a lot of respect for the person, whoever the individual that, and if the sitter wants to hear it or not. Most of the time you think they'd want to maybe, but and then you move on. Is what so it's really about actually how important it is, like you're saying, really to do this kind of work. You have to really be prepared. And meditation, like you said.
Right. I think it's really important to recognize that, yes, we are serving the spirit world as mediums. We are communicating what they communicate to us, but respect goes in all directions.
Right. So where would I learn more about mediumship or how to find, let's say I was seeking out to find a particular medium. Can you give me any give us all suggestions about how we go about that?
A lot of different ways. One thing is that we have a couple of great organizations in the United States and abroad. One is the National Spiritualist Association of Churches, and abroad also internationally we have the Spiritualist National Union. So there are a couple of bodies, by no means the only spiritualist organizations, but those are two main ones that can help people locate classes and services and mediums and that kind of thing. I also like to just recommend word of mouth, because if I give somebody a session that they're pleased with, chances are the next person I'm working with is going to be the referral. So that's a big part of it. People really want to know that you can do what you say you do, I'd say. And then as far as other ways of learning about it, I would strongly advise finding more than one teacher, because what I found over the years is each teacher brings a different tool to the toolkit. And maybe one teacher is going to be great explaining platform mediumship, and another teacher is going to be great explaining how to deepen that link with spirit. Or another speaker is going to talk to you about your presentation skills and how much you can give to somebody before you need to give them some airspace to process that mentally. So there's so many different things we can learn from different teachers. I don't think anybody's got, they can find everything in one person. I think that, when the student is ready, the teacher will come, and that may be one teacher for life, but it's more likely to be several.
Right. I like the collectiveness of it all. That makes sense. I wanted to ask you, I've been on your website. In fact, your website is on the for everybody. It's on your guest page, which will be on there forever. And it's at www.communicationsinspirit.com, correct?
Yes.
And so you have a fantastic website. It's very informative, everybody. And I suggest, do you also have your events on there? Certain areas where you're going to be listed as well?
The information can be found on the website, and also I have a Facebook page at Dr. Rom Weber, Spiritual Medium. And so I post to both. The website's in the process of being updated a bit now, and I also have a newsletter. So you can just email me at drromweber@gmail.com. I can get you on the newsletter list too. So we'll like communication in a couple different forms.
Are you going to be coming out to California anytime soon?
I miss it so. I was there for years.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's right. Well, Brenda's living here too. The other two guys don't. But yeah, I wanted to ask you as well. Do you ever pick up on anything like, you were talking about something at the very beginning when someone comes through and they don't, during that time they might bring up some information. Maybe a child was born, or at the time of death, that wasn't the case within the family or something. How do you feel about your point of view about the fact of maybe somebody has, I know this isn't a show about reincarnation or anything. I'm not saying all I know is what I know. I don't believe in anything. All I know is what I know. But how do you feel about somebody that might have come back, or if that's even a part of what your thought process might be, that might come back, that still you can connect with on the spirit how they were before? Do you follow me?
Yes, absolutely. I've thought, and here's where I am with it now. Again, I'm not trying to convince anybody of my beliefs, but let me share my perspective from working in a mediumistic capacity. So people will say, if a relative is reincarnated, how can they still talk to me? Right? That's it. They're off in a different life. And over time, I've taken this perspective that reincarnation may not be so linear. I think of it more like an octopus, if you will. And the idea that everybody's got that central core. and that we have tentacles kind of going out into different lives. It's a different way of explaining it. In Theosophy, as a tradition, they call a similar idea the monad. And it's the idea that we descend through layers and layers and layers of dimension until an incarnation into the life as we know it. And so my sense is that it makes more sense to me that we're probably living in more than one place at more than one time, and we're gathering information, and maybe those senses of deja vu and vuja day are coming because we are actually living like that, or that we are getting information from another perspective, another dimension. What I am assured of is this: in spirit, time is not how we see it here. That much I'm sure of. And I think that when we talk about doing work with the spirit world, we have to loosen up our idea of linearity just a bit, because I don't think that's how they see it.
I like that. I like your perspective. I think that's I like that. I never thought about or thought about it in that way. I really like how you explain that as well. Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. Like I said, I don't use the word believe. I don't know why. I always say all I know is what I know, but I like that your perspective on that. I think that's it makes sense to me. I hate to say this, we have to say goodbye to you. We're at the end of the interview. I could interview you forever, for a long time. You've been lovely and really informative, and I really appreciate you coming on the show here. And I do want to, if there's anything else you'd like to say to anybody, or last words, last words before we go.
For sure. Just like to give a pitch out to anybody who's going to be in Cleveland on Saturday. We've got 2 mediums at large radio show live at the West Shore Unitarian Universalist. That's Saturday, May 18th, with a 7:30 p.m. start, door 7. And you can reach us there at the website called 2mediumsatlarge.com for advanced ticketing. That will be a gallery-style demonstration with myself and 3 other mediums. We've all been radio show hosts and guest hosts on 2 Mediums at Large. So we're taking it live.
That's fantastic. That sounds like fun. But I'm not going to be in Cleveland, but that still sounds like fun. Wow, that does sound like fun. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rom, for joining us. And again, everybody on our website, on psychicaccesstalkradio.com, we'll have your websites available, and you can read about her bio on there as well. And I check out the website. It's great. It's very informative. I did. I loved it. So thank you so much, and have a great time this weekend.
So much. It's been such a pleasure being on. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with Psychic Access Talk Radio.
Thank you, Dr. Ron. We appreciate having you.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye.
Hello. My name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers. Get access. Psychic Access, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.